Unit 2, Part 2, we're talking about how to determine whether sentences are simple or compound. Right? So I should quote you from 23 of Klenk. One sentence occurs as a... Okay, so a sentence is compound if it contains another sentence as a component. Klenk 23. One sentence occurs as a component of a second if... So one sentence occurs as a component of a second if, whenever the first sentence is replaced by another declarative sentence, the result is still a grammatical sentence. Right? So you can replace this with any other sentence and get another grammatical sentence. Yes? She has a loose tooth. Okay, so notice how a sentence can fail this test, right? So Klenk has the example, the person who ate the cake has a guilty conscience, right? Does the phrase "who ate the cake" count as a component of that sentence? If it did, then that would be it's here on page 23. If it did count as a component of that larger sentence, then this whole sentence, the long sentence would be a compound sentence, right? And that who ate the cake would be a component of that sentence. No, it doesn't count as a component. Who ate the cake does not count as a component of the sentence. Why not? It fails this test. If you replace who ate the cake with worms have souls, you get the person worms have souls has a guilty conscience, right? So you've gone from the person who ate the cake has a guilty conscience to the person worms have souls has a guilty conscience. See how I'm applying the test? You're seeing whether you can replace that declarative sentence with any other declarative sentence. If the result is a grammatical sentence, then yes, that first sentence was a component of the second. In this case, you fail that test. You do not get, as a result, a grammatical sentence. The person, worms have souls, has a guilty conscience is nonsense. It's neither true nor false. Right? It's not a grammatical sentence. Okay, so there are different ways of being a compound sentence. So now let's expand to the larger definition. So now we're going to use the term logically, right? A sentence is compound if it logically contains another sentence as a component, and you can satisfy that logically contained in two different ways, right? So a sentence is a compound if it logically contains another sentence as a component. You can contain another sentence as a component literally. One sentence either literally contains another sentence as a component, I'll tell you what that means, or the sentence, right, paraphrased, or one sentence can logically contain another sentence as a component by being paraphrased. The sentence can be paraphrased such that it logically contains other sentences as components. Okay? So, and paraphrase has a specific definition, specific meaning involving logical equivalence, which I'll talk to you about. Right, so it's on 25 where she says, top of 25, first full sentence, we may say that one sentence logically contains another sentence. One sentence logically contains another if it literally contains the other sentence as a component, or if it can be paraphrased into an explicitly compound sentence that contains the other sentence as a component. So let's see what that means. You can have a compound subject. Let me get out of the way of the examples. Why don't you stand over here? Look in the other corner. Right, so might fall off. This sentence we had, our first example, Dan believes that Eden has a loose tooth. This sentence literally contains the other sentence as a component, right? I can just, as the sentence is, without any manipulation, I can replace that with any other sentence and get a meaningful sentence, right? Okay. Or Dan is Australian and Bruce is American. Okay? That is a compound sentence. It contains as components two sentences. Dan is Australian. Second one, Bruce is American. It's going to be formed with the sentential operator blank and blank. That is the structural form of that sentence. okay? And you can just literally replace the two components with any others, and you get another grammatical sentence. But consider this is going to be called the compound. This is a sentence which does not literally contain another sentence as a component, but will nonetheless count as compound because it does logically contain another sentence as a component. Why does it logically contain another sentence as a component? Because this sentence can be paraphrased such that it does literally contain another sentence as a component. All right, Josh and Steve live in New York. This is going to be one with a compound subject. And next one, Bruce likes TV and Nintendo. It's going to be compound predicate. These things are discussed in the Klenk, chapter 2. So Josh and Steve live in New York. You might think Steve live in New York. That is something that's itself is a compound. It's not, for one thing, it's not quite a grammatical sentence in its own right. Steve lives in New York rather than Steve live in New York. Secondly, Josh and worms have souls. Right, here I'm applying the test. Can I replace this with any other sentence and get something grammatical? No. Josh and worms have souls. It's meaningless, that's grammatical. Josh and 2 + 2 = 5. That's meaningless, right? That's not a sentence. Josh what? Right? The Josh, you've got a compound subject here. What this means is, right, and here we're saying what the logical structure of this sentence is Josh lives in New York and Steve lives in New York. Right? What I have given there is a paraphrase of this sentence, where paraphrase means this sentence and the sentence I've just paraphrased it with are logically equivalent, which means they're both true in exactly the, it doesn't quite mean this, but this will do. They're both true in exactly the same situations, and they're both false in exactly the same situations. We'll see in a minute when I give the Dan and Uchenna are married, how an attempted paraphrase fails, okay? So this is logically equivalent to, that is, can be paraphrased as, Josh lives in New York and Steve lives in New York. And there, right, we have the sentence analyzed such that those two components, Josh lives in New York, that can be replaced with anything else. Worms have souls and Steve lives in New York. That's grammatical, right? That makes sense. We can evaluate the truth value of that, right? And same result if we replace the other sentence. So that sentence does have a structure, right? Its form or structure is that it is a conjunction. That's what we call and sentences. Right? It's a conjunction of the two simple sentences. Josh lives in New York. Steve lives in New York. Okay. Bruce likes TV and Nintendo. Same result's going to happen if you try replacing Bruce likes TV, right, and Nintendo, right. Worms have souls and Nintendo doesn't make any sense, right? Well, worms have souls and Nintendo. That's not grammatical. So it fails. Is this a compound sentence? Well, it doesn't literally contain another sentence as a component, but once again, it can be paraphrased. Hold on. It can be paraphrased into a sentence which does literally contain another sentence as a component. So this will count as logically containing other sentences as a component, right? And Bruce likes TV and Nintendo, that is properly paraphrased as Bruce likes TV and Bruce likes Nintendo, right? So it's a compound predicate. And that too has the same structure as this, right? It's Bruce likes TV and Bruce likes Nintendo, right? It is a conjunction, right? Here is finally a failed one. Dan and Uchenna are married, right? Is this a compound sentence? Well, can it be paraphrased, right? Can it be paraphrased such that the paraphrase literally contains other sentences as a component? No, Uchenna is my wife, right? So Dan and Uchenna are married. The attempted paraphrase would be Dan is married and Uchenna is married, but that is not logically equivalent to what I mean when I say this, assuming that I'm asserting that we're married to each other. right? Dan and Uchenna are married. I'm saying we are married to each other, but if I try to paraphrase it as Dan is married and Uchenna is married, that could be true where we're married to different people, right? But then this, what I've asserted in this sentence, would not be true, okay? So it isn't paraphrased like that. This is rather asserting a relation, as opposed to the proposed analysis, the proposed paraphrase, which would be saying that the predicate is married applies to Dan and applies to Uchenna, right? As if it's a one-place predicate, as if it just applies to one. No, it's a relation that I'm asserting, and it can't be paraphrased. So this would have to count as a simple sentence.